The delicate balance of power within the oldest monarchy in the modern world does not rest upon written constitutions or public decrees, but upon the silent, heavily guarded traditions that take place behind the closed, gilded doors of royal residences. For more than 3 decades, a calculated, systematic effort had been deployed by the current Queen Consort to secure a sense of permanent public legitimacy and unquestioned authority over the British royal narrative. Every public appearance, every carefully vetted press release, and every strategic alliance within the palace walls had been orchestrated to cement her position at the absolute pinnacle of the royal hierarchy. Yet, this entire multi-decade architectural framework of influence was completely and systematically dismantled in the span of a single evening by a brilliant, highly calculated public appearance that no one within the senior ranks of the palace saw coming. The primary instrument of this monumental structural shift was not a legal document, a royal decree, or an act of parliament, but a priceless, legendary historical artifact valued by leading global jewelry experts at an astonishing $135 million. The Cambridge Lover's Knot Tiara, a breathtaking masterpiece adorned with 19 brilliant diamond arches and 19 hanging exquisite Baroque pearls, became the catalyst for an unprecedented breakdown in royal decorum, a visible emotional collapse from the reigning queen consort, and a severe internal security crisis that threatened to fracture the institution from within. The timeline of this profound structural collapse traces back precisely to the evening of March 18, 2026, at exactly 8:15 in the evening, during the prestigious state banquet hosted for the President of Nigeria at the historic St. George's Hall inside Windsor Castle. As international dignitaries and senior political figures gathered beneath the magnificent architecture, the Princess of Wales executed a flawless, exceptionally precise public relations strategy that altered the course of royal history. She entered the Grand Hall radiating an aura of absolute majesty, deliberately choosing to wear the iconic Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara. Historically, this specific piece carried an immense psychological and emotional weight, famously worn by the late Princess Diana to solidify her international status and project an image of unassailable elegance to the global public despite her profound personal discomfort within the royal family. By authorizing the release of this exact piece from the highly restricted depths of the royal vaults, Kate Middleton did not merely select a beautiful piece of jewelry for a formal evening. She purposefully repurposed a highly charged historical artifact into a direct, undeniable visual assertion of her current influence, her unbreakable bond with the public, and her unquestioned authority over the modern royal narrative. The immediate impact of this aesthetic and strategic decision was both measurable and devastating to the established palace hierarchy. Within mere minutes of her arrival, global media algorithms and major international fashion publications began generating millions of side-by-side visual comparisons between the current Princess of Wales and the late, globally adored Princess Diana. This digital phenomenon grew with such rapid, organic momentum that it completely overshadowed the diplomatic purpose of the state banquet, effectively erasing the reigning queen consort from global headlines and pushing her entirely out of the media spotlight. For the Queen Consort, this continuous, highly publicized visual association between Kate and Diana poses a direct, existential threat to the legitimacy she spent 30 years trying to build. The strategic alignment between the memory of Diana and the current standing of Kate systematically undermines the current leadership, reminding the world of a legacy that the palace had spent decades trying to quietly move past. During the Windsor Castle banquet, this simmering internal tension reached a critical, highly volatile breaking point. A senior royal aide, speaking under strict conditions of anonymity, reported a highly irregular, deeply strained exchange just moments before the formal royal procession was scheduled to begin. The Queen Consort, visibly distressed and deeply unsettled by the unfolding media optics, was overheard issuing a direct, urgent, and uncharacteristically sharp order to her personal equerry. Driven by a sudden wave of institutional insecurity, she demanded an immediate, comprehensive audit of the Royal Collection Trust borrowing protocols, insisting with absolute urgency that much stricter boundaries must be permanently enforced regarding what she classified as Class A royal heirlooms. It was a desperate attempt to implement administrative barriers that would prevent what she perceived as an unauthorized, highly damaging overshadowing of the monarchy's current leadership. Yet, despite the escalating tension vibrating through the private holding rooms, the Princess of Wales maintained absolute, unyielding composure, offering no verbal response or defensive reaction to the panic unfolding around her. Her strategy relied entirely on visual dominance and psychological poise, delivering a powerful message to the entire household without uttering a single spoken word. The public loyalty, universal fascination, and deep emotional connection that once belonged exclusively to Diana had securely, irreversibly transitioned to Kate. Confronted with this undeniable, hard reality and realizing that her immediate commands to restrict the usage of the historic tiara had failed to alter the situation, the Queen Consort experienced a rare, highly visible loss of emotional composure. In full view of senior diplomatic staff and high-ranking palace officials, she was forced to discreetly wipe away a tear of frustration. However, this fleeting physiological reaction was merely the visible surface of a much deeper, far more dangerous structural crisis. This momentary lapse in emotional control marked the beginning of a severe operational breakdown within the palace walls. What occurred just minutes later in the secluded, private corridors of Windsor Castle breached standard royal security protocols, actively involved the elite Royal Protection Squad, and forced an immediate, emergency intervention from the highest levels of the institution. To truly understand how a princess gained the immense leverage required to so openly and successfully challenge a reigning queen consort inside the historic walls of Windsor Castle, one must look far past the sparkling diamonds, the grand state banquets, and the superficial glamour of royal life. The foundation for this unprecedented display of female authority and political independence was not built overnight through reckless defiance. Instead, the answer lies within a flawlessly executed, long-term public relations blueprint that began taking shape during her most private, deeply vulnerable days inside the London clinic. Let us carefully examine the historical record to see how this invisible shield of power was forged. On March 22, 2024, the entire world collectively paused as Kate sat alone on a simple, rustic wooden bench to deliver a televised message that permanently changed the trajectory of the modern British monarchy. With profound vulnerability, she announced to the global public that she was undergoing preventative chemotherapy following a serious medical diagnosis. In that single, deeply moving broadcast, she completely transcended her formal royal title, elevating herself from a mere member of the aristocracy into a universal, relatable symbol of human resilience, motherhood, and quiet courage. The immense bravery it took to share her private health battle while fiercely protecting her 3 young children from an aggressive media storm commanded an entirely new, unassailable level of global respect. She demonstrated a profound, quiet strength that resonated deeply across international borders, proving to millions her absolute psychological and emotional fitness for her future role as queen. By fighting through her severe illness with unwavering dignity and eventually stepping back into the public eye, Kate secured something far more valuable and permanent than any physical heirloom housed within the palace vaults. She acquired an impenetrable, absolute shield of public goodwill. In the modern era, where the monarchy survives entirely on the consent and affection of the public, this unyielding adoration is the ultimate, most lethal form of royal power. This overwhelming level of universal support makes her practically untouchable within the ancient institution. Any internal attempt by senior royals to sideline her, restrict her influence, or whisper subtle criticisms from the shadows would immediately result in a catastrophic, completely unmanageable public relations failure for the crown. Even the reigning king and his inner circle recognize this reality, knowing that if anyone were perceived as creating difficulties or placing stress upon a devoted mother who had just fought her way back from a severe health crisis, the public backlash would be swift, brutal, and completely unforgiving. Her survival, coupled with her magnificent grace, granted her a level of diplomatic immunity that no traditional palace protocol or historic precedent could ever hope to override. With this invisible shield of public adoration firmly in place, Kate and her highly sophisticated media team initiated a brilliant, exceptionally modern strategy where every single public appearance became a carefully curated, multi-layered message. By continuously choosing to wear signature, highly recognizable jewelry pieces closely associated with Princess Diana, Kate engaged directly and successfully with the global media algorithm. Major international fashion outlets, digital networks, and news publications immediately recognized these powerful visual cues, creating an organic digital wave. The internet algorithms naturally favored these emotional, visually stunning tributes, instantly flooding the news feeds of hundreds of millions of people worldwide with side-by-side images celebrating a shared elegance, duty, and lineage. This was not merely a touching tribute to her late mother-in-law. It was a highly effective, modern isolation tactic executed with absolute precision. Every single time the global algorithm highlighted Kate's seamless connection to Diana's enduring legacy, it simultaneously and effectively overshadowed the Queen Consort's ongoing public relations efforts. The Queen Consort found herself quietly, systematically pushed into a psychological corner, entirely unable to compete with the overwhelming digital presence and emotional weight of two globally adored princesses of Wales. She was effectively sidelined not by an official royal decree or an administrative act, but by the undeniable, unstoppable organic momentum of public adoration. Kate had secured the ultimate high ground, turning the world's admiration into an absolute tactical advantage, leaving her opposition with absolutely no viable moves left to make on the public stage. When reason is clouded by profound personal insecurity and institutional desperation, established authority can quickly unravel into absolute chaos behind the closed doors of a historic fortress. At exactly 9:05 on the evening of March 18, 2026, an unprecedented, highly restricted security protocol was officially activated inside the private, dimly lit corridors of Windsor Castle. Internal communication radios belonging to the elite security teams suddenly crackled with a classification that is rarely, if ever, invoked during a formal diplomatic state event, Code Blue. A high-level designation of this magnitude is strictly barred from being used for mere scheduling conflicts, administrative disagreements, or casual arguments between staff members. It is reserved exclusively to indicate an immediate, active physical security disruption within the inner, highly sensitive royal perimeter. The psychological tension that had been building with immense pressure since the beginning of the evening between the highest-ranking women of the court finally fractured, driven by an overwhelming sense of being publicly sidelined and rendered digitally invisible. The Queen Consort made an impulsive, high-stakes decision that shattered decades of established royal decorum and institutional restraint. In a secluded, softly lit hallway safely away from the watchful eyes of the international press corps, foreign dignitaries, and visiting political figures, she completely lost her emotional composure. Acting on a sudden, uncontrollable surge of institutional frustration and personal grievance, she issued a direct, aggressive, and highly irregular command to her personal protection officers. Citing an alleged, entirely unspecified violation of protocol regarding the removal of historic items, she ordered her guards to step forward immediately and physically retrieve the legendary Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara directly from the head of the Princess of Wales. It was a staggering, historic lapse in judgment, an impulsive directive that completely abandoned the fundamental dignity and restraint required of the highest office within the British monarchy. However, the Princess of Wales was neither unprotected, isolated, nor caught off guard by this sudden, aggressive escalation within the castle walls. Within fractions of a single second, her own elite royal protection squad, the highly specialized and fiercely loyal SO-14 unit, moved with absolute, flawless tactical precision. Recognizing an imminent threat to the safety and physical autonomy of the future queen, they immediately stepped into the space, forming an unyielding, impenetrable physical barrier around Kate. What followed in that historic corridor was a tense, unprecedented standoff between two distinct factions of the royal security apparatus. There were urgent, hushed commands whispered into lapel microphones, the heavy, echoing shuffle of dress shoes against the antique, priceless carpets, and the strained, visible physical effort of highly trained officers actively blocking one another's path in a desperate bid to maintain control. Yet, the true defining moment of this entire structural crisis was the striking, undeniable psychological contrast between the two royal women at the center of the storm. While the queen consort exhibited visible panic, erratic behavior, and raw desperation, Kate Middleton remained a striking picture of absolute, unshakable grace and supreme confidence. She did not take a single step backward. She did not raise her voice in anger, nor did she stoop to engage in a frantic, unseemly hallway argument with her superior. She stood perfectly still beneath the amber glow of the corridor lights, projecting a profound, quiet nobility that completely commanded the surrounding environment. Her absolute, dignified silence was her strongest defense. In the midst of the operational chaos, her calm demeanor demonstrated a level of absolute psychological control that left no doubt among the panicked staff and security officers regarding who was truly commanding the space and the future of the crown. The unprecedented confrontation quickly reached a critical threshold, triggering an immediate, localized electronic lockdown of that entire wing of Windsor Castle. The severe operational nature of the incident required urgent, immediate escalation, forcing King Charles to abruptly excuse himself from the head table of the ongoing diplomatic banquet. This represented a massive, historic breach of international etiquette and state protocol, leaving foreign leaders bewildered, just to personally de-escalate the explosive situation unfolding mere doors away from the grand banquet hall. By the time the king arrived in the secluded corridor to intervene and restore institutional order, the damage to the queen consort's standing and authority among the palace inner circle was already catastrophic and entirely irreversible. Her aggressive attempt to assert absolute dominance had resulted in a humiliating, visible failure, exposing her deep vulnerability and emotional instability in front of senior aides, high-ranking protection officers, and personal staff. More importantly, the events of those highly charged, frantic minutes generated an official, highly classified internal security report. Every physical action, every aggressive verbal order issued, and the formal activation of the Emergency Code Blue Protocol was permanently, indelibly logged into the restricted archives of the Royal Protection Squad. This documented breach of protocol was no longer a temporary palace secret that could be quietly swept under the rug. It instantly transformed into an undeniable, permanent piece of institutional leverage. It became a decisive, silent advantage now placed securely and permanently in the hands of the Princess of Wales and her legal team, setting the stage for a massive institutional counterstrike. Barely 24 hours after the unprecedented disruption in the private quarters of Windsor Castle, a highly classified, red-stamped file was placed directly onto the mahogany desk of King Charles. The sender of this sensitive package was none other than the Prince of Wales himself, and the implicit message contained within those tightly secured pages was completely unmistakable. It was a definitive, non-negotiable institutional ultimatum. To fully grasp the immense gravity and historic weight of this document, one must understand exactly how power is administrative delegated behind palace gates. The Royal Collection Trust, functioning in strict, permanent coordination with the Lord Chamberlain's office, governs the distribution, maintenance, and public use of the monarchy's most valuable historical artifacts. Traditionally, the reigning queen consort holds what is functionally known as a royal veto, possessing the ultimate administrative authority to approve, delay, or outright deny the release of any Class A heirlooms, which notably includes the famous pieces once worn by the late Princess Diana. This institutional rule was originally designed to maintain a strict internal hierarchy and protect the crown's assets, but following the chaotic events at Windsor, Prince William was positioned to completely rewrite those ancient rules. The file sitting on the king's desk contained the official, unedited Code Blue security logs, detailing every single moment of the previous night's physical confrontation and the queen consort's erratic behavior. William's leverage was sharp, undeniable, and exceptionally well calculated by his legal advisors. His team made it clearly known that if the ongoing, toxic issue regarding his late mother's physical legacy and the harassment of his recovering wife was not permanently and formally resolved, they were prepared to escalate the matter far outside the palace walls. The alternatives presented to the reigning monarch were stark, brutal, and deeply damaging to the future of the crown. Either the detailed, highly embarrassing security reports of the Queen Consort's aggressive hallway intervention would inevitably find their way to the international press corps, or the Prince of Wales would take the unprecedented, historic step of filing a formal legal request in the High Court of London to officially divide his late mother's historical assets from the Crown's main estate. The public relations calculus of this specific scenario was absolutely devastating to contemplate. Imagine the global headlines if the international public were to learn that the current Queen Consort had attempted to use physical security forces to intimidate and disarm a universally adored princess, especially a devoted mother who had recently won a highly public, grueling battle with cancer. The resulting global outrage would be completely unmanageable, triggering a profound institutional crisis that the modern monarchy simply could not weather in its current state. The media narrative of a stepmother cornering a beloved, recovering princess to strip her of Diana's tiara would cause the crown's public support to collapse overnight. Sensing the walls closing in with absolute certainty, the Queen Consort's inner circle attempted a hasty, quiet defense. Over the following days, carefully curated, anonymous quotes began to surface in select friendly tabloids, attempting to reframe the Windsor incident as a mere misunderstanding over scheduling or a minor confusion regarding jewelry conservation protocol. It was a desperate, transparent attempt to soften the narrative, but these fabricated leaks dissolved almost instantly upon contact with the public. They simply could not compete with the sheer, crushing force of Kate's current standing. The Princess of Wales did not need to issue a public denial or brief a single reporter to defend herself. Her dignified silence, backed by the absolute, unwavering loyalty of the global public, rendered the tabloid excuses entirely powerless and irrelevant. King Charles found himself backed into an impossible, deeply painful corner, caught directly between his intense personal loyalty to his wife and his fundamental, sacred duty to preserve the long-term stability and survival of the British crown. Precisely at 8 o'clock on the historical morning of May 29th, 26th, the final definitive measure was quietly, calculatedly enacted behind the palace walls, effectively and permanently ending Queen Camilla's ultimate administrative authority over the heavily guarded royal vaults. Her absolute veto power, which had once been her most formidable institutional weapon to maintain hierarchy, was officially and completely revoked. Inside the hushed, deeply formal, and historic walls of the Bow Room at Buckingham Palace, a monumental and unprecedented legal document was officially signed into law. There were no flashing cameras from the international press corps, no celebratory diplomatic fanfare, and no public audiences to witness the shift. There was only the swift, decisive, and echoing scratch of a fountain pen against thick vellum paper. This historic act was witnessed exclusively by the king's most trusted senior aides, top-tier constitutional legal advisors, and the personal solicitors of the Prince of Wales. This deeply private, high-stakes ceremony formalized the immediate creation of a completely new, independent institutional entity known as the Diana Heritage Trust. By the singular, historic stroke of King Charles's pen, the Princess of Wales was granted absolute, independent, and unchallengeable control over every single piece of jewelry, diamond tiara, and historic heirloom once associated with or worn by the late Princess of Wales. This unprecedented legal agreement means that Kate now holds 100% executive authority over these priceless historical assets. She no longer needs to submit formal borrowing requests to the Lord Chamberlain's office, navigate the notoriously complex and hostile palace bureaucracy, or most importantly, seek the prior approval or clearance of the Queen Consort. With this single, brilliant legal maneuver, Queen Camilla was systematically, completely removed from the institutional chain of command, and her administrative voice regarding these highly sensitive heirlooms was entirely neutralized within the inner court. Shortly after the ink dried permanently on the historic legal agreement, Kensington Palace issued a carefully coordinated, flawlessly timed public statement to the global media. It was an absolute masterclass in modern royal public relations, completely flawless, exceptionally gracious, and remarkably cool-headed. The Princess of Wales announced to the world that she was deeply honored to accept the lifetime presidency of the newly formed independent trust. In her official statement, she noted that her primary, unyielding focus is to preserve this magnificent artistic and historical legacy with the utmost care, ensuring that the rich history and the precious memories it holds remain entirely intact for the future generations, particularly for Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. It was an exceptionally brilliant and strategic piece of communication. By framing this monumental, aggressive transfer of institutional power simply as a quiet maternal duty and the historical preservation of assets for the future king and his siblings, Kate elevated herself far above any damaging rumors of internal palace conflict or hallway standoffs. The entire statement was completely devoid of vindictiveness or petty triumph, acting effectively as a velvet glove pulled tightly over an iron fist. It quietly but firmly reminded the public, the international press, and the entire palace staff that her current authority stems not from aggressive demands or political manipulation, but from her undeniable, biological role as the mother of the future monarch. She did not make a single mention of the dramatic confrontation at Windsor Castle, nor did she need to acknowledge the Queen Consort's sudden, humiliating loss of institutional influence. She projected the immaculate image of a profoundly dignified, completely clean, and composed leader whose only true concern is the enduring stability and survival of the crown. It was a brilliant, historic victory. The Princess of Wales did not just secure a magnificent collection of diamonds and pearls, she permanently secured her unassailable position at the very top of the modern royal hierarchy, leaving her opposition with no choice but to stand back and look up from below. However, experienced observers of the British monarchy know that the battle for the royal vaults has officially concluded, but the deep-seated, toxic tension behind the palace gates has not simply vanished into the thin air of London. When an immensely influential, competitive figure is suddenly stripped of their primary institutional leverage and backed into a tight corner in full view of the household staff, they do not simply surrender. They quietly, calculatedly redirect their next political move. With the legal agreement of the Diana Heritage Trust now firmly empowering and protecting the Princess of Wales, the future of the monarchy's internal hierarchy branches into a highly complex, dangerous psychological landscape. While the Princess of Wales has firmly secured the historical diamonds, an entirely new, completely hidden front is already rapidly forming within the administrative offices of the Crown. According to the latest high-level intelligence leaking directly from senior administrative circles just hours ago, the Queen Consort's legal and financial team has initiated a highly confidential, deeply aggressive legal maneuver. They are discreetly requesting a comprehensive, line-by-line internal review of the private financial will, undisclosed assets, and complex trust structures originally established by the late Queen Elizabeth II before her passing. This represents a sharp, exceptionally calculated pivot by the Queen Consort. Realizing that she can no longer exercise her authority or restrict Kate's movements regarding the physical royal jewelry collection, she is shifting her entire tactical focus to a far more practical, restrictive, and devastating asset: institutional capital and independent funding streams. The true objective of this sudden administrative counterstrike appears to be a strict, unyielding audit of the private funding streams, historical estates, and monthly financial allowances directly allocated toward Kensington Palace. It is a quiet, highly dangerous administrative strike aimed directly at the immense financial resources that support the independent operations, global charitable initiatives, and household autonomy of the Prince and Princess of Wales. By attempting to restrict or legally challenge the flow of institutional capital, the Queen Consort is trying to build a new financial cage around the future Queen. Princess Kate has successfully placed the monarchy's most powerful, iconic tiara firmly on her own head through sheer public support and legal brilliance, proving herself to be the ultimate master strategist of the modern era. But as the silent war behind palace gates shifts from the glittering brilliance of the royal vaults to the cold, ruthless, and complex reality of international trusts and private bank accounts, The critical question remains whether her impenetrable shield of public goodwill can protect her independent household against this incoming, hostile administrative tide. The curtain has fallen on the battle for the tiara, but the war for the true financial soul of the British monarchy has only just begun.